should say. So you and I are doing a crazy thing, running for Red Deer City Council.
Yeah, that's for sure. It definitely throws ourselves out there.
Yeah. Well, I was super excited to see you running. Like I seriously was like, yes. I'm super happy that another, just a good person and a good policy person is running because I think that's really what the city needs is we need people that know policy, that go deep into the weeds and, they think 15, 20 years down the road rather than, next year.
Yeah, I agree. And I was really glad to see you did decide to throw your hat in the ring because again, same sort of thing. It's easier when you've got a couple of like-minded people.
Yeah.
And as we get to meet people and find out where they want us to be, that starts to make it a little more complicated. But off the hop, I've been getting a lot of great response, and people seem to be excited for the same reasons. It's the business thinking, it's the second and third order consequence thinking, and a little bit of my history that I genuinely want to see Red Deer thrive for my kids, my grandkids, and future.
Yeah, that's great. What we're doing here is a little different, where I am very much in support of you, and I am hoping that you're in support of me, but you don't really see this where candidates support each other. I mean, I was involved in 2013 with Red Deer First. It was a little different. It wasn't necessarily a slate, but that's how it came out. But I'm really thankful that we're all kind of doing our own thing, but we see the value in supporting other good candidates.
It's huge. If you go into it adversarial,
Yeah.
then you're going to have problems in the future. Again, it's that second and third order consequence thinking. I want to get to know everybody who's running. I want to hear what they bring to the table. Everybody belongs at the table. There's
Yeah.
no real bad ideas. I mean, I guess there are bad ideas when it comes to politics. Business, I tend to leave it as, brainstorming. We're throwing up ideas. Everything goes up. Your idea might lead to somebody else going, wait a minute, modify that, add this, and there you are.
So when you're saying second and third consequences, what do you mean by that?
It comes down to people when they make an emotionally based decision,
Mm.
feels good at the time.
Yeah.
And it probably looks good at the time. However, the law of unintended consequences will inevitably win. And you have to start to think through, okay, and effects. And I guess what we do in business is we do a failure, effects, and modes analysis. Or sorry, failure modes and effects analysis. So you take your idea and you start poking holes in it. What would make this fail? What would be the mode that this would fail? It's kind of scientific thinking,
Yeah.
but it's a little more, I'll call it boring. You almost really do the paperwork, but you start to think, okay, well, let's pretend people are complaining about allergies because we've got too many lilacs.
Yeah.
Okay, so one candidate says, well, we just cut down the lilacs. And at the time, probably not a bad, horrific option. But then you start to think, well, the pollinators need them. There's the ecosystem needs it, kind of thing.
Just the aesthetics.
The aesthetic, exactly. They're wonderful, right? Candidate two says, well, we'll just hand out Benadryl. Well, okay, in the immediacy, probably not a horrible option. However, you start to think, okay, well, what's the cost of that? And what's the long term? What kind of reliance are you building and things? So you have to think about your idea, its immediate effect, and then as it spreads out.
Yeah. No, I get that. And that, like we were talking about, it's a long-term thinking, right? Because you can have like your explanation of the second and third consequence. You can have one immediately. You can have one in 5 years. You can have one in 10 years, right? And if we're not thinking that 10, 20 years down the road, we're going to make decisions that in 20 years, we'll be looking back and be like, how do we have a 10% tax increase? Right? It's wild that. So when I ran 2013, 2017, I was young. I get it, right? I'm a very different person now. I'm proud of what I did, but I would do it differently, right?
Right.
But I was warning people of where we're going. And it's so sad that we are here and we are now having the consequences that I was warning about. And people in the city are like, well, where did it happen? Or where did it come from? it's like you could see the trajectory, right? And I think that's one of the important reasons to have people that are so involved in policy and understand policy in politics,
Yes,
willing to do the boring. It is boring,
it is. It's tedious.
but it's actually kind of exciting too. I like it, right? But
Yeah.
not everyone's built for that.
Yeah, I'm middle of the road when it comes to policy and policy development, where I
Sure.
do know you and I have known each other for years and have served on different policy type boards.
Yeah.
And you're right, you have a prolific idea machine going inside
Yeah.
there, and it's fantastic. Once in a while, some of them are absolutely right where they need to be. So where I do my best is I like to assess and sort of filter a lot of those ideas.
Hmm.
I have good policy ideas periodically, but I spend more of my energy on refining and improving.
Uh-huh.
So then it works, particularly when you're talking about a council and governance,
Yeah.
where governance is, as they said in the Institute of Corporate Directors program, governance is nose in, fingers out,
Yeah.
and is all about nose in, fingers out. However, you have to think about the people who have to have their fingers in it, what
Uh-huh.
that's going to put them at risk of, again, as you said, 5,
Uh-huh.
10 years down the road. When I did a little bit of research, pulled back a bunch of the city budgets, looked through the numbers, looked through the amount spent per capita, and you can see very clearly the trend that you're talking about, where it stayed steady in the budgeted amount, but they don't report what they pulled from the surplus and or the reserve fund. So then all of a sudden now, hey, wait, we don't have a reserve fund.
Yeah.
Well, it seemed like a good idea at the time because we needed it. Did you need it, or did it just feel good at that moment?
Well, we need, $170,000 art pieces down by bridges that we don't need to renovate. It's important. It's important that those are there.
Yeah, I
Little
hear you.
tongue in cheek, maybe.
And I also know that the arts and programs have their place, but they don't have their place ahead of affordability of life.
Yeah. And
That's
I genuinely think like I've gone through a transition in the last 10 years. So even in the last couple of years, I've really delved into understanding, not in depth, but a lot deeper for me, just the importance of art. And we've bought a couple art pieces for our own home in the last couple of years, whereas
nice.
5 years ago, I would never do that. Right. And I find myself staring at them. And then, even for 5 seconds, and the depth, and how it makes me comprehend, or not comprehend, that's the wrong word. It just makes me appreciative of the deeper things in life. Right. And we're planning on buying a few more as the budget allows and whatnot. But I have gone down this road where I didn't think I would be here, where I really appreciate the the finer things in life, if you will, right?
Yep.
And the problem I have with the city, though, is like you said, or maybe I'm misinterpreting you. It's just if you aren't paving your roads, if you aren't, doing the core services, if we have to do a 10% tax increase, which is wildly affecting people, and the top of the list is that we need some art piece for a bridge, then something's off.
Absolutely. That's where now I also want to make sure that I'm clear for everybody that I don't want to campaign through the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
I live in my leadership models and how I deal with things and drive people is I don't want to be against something. I want to be for something better.
Yep.
And that being said, when you start to look at what future spending needs to be, future spending does need to take into account how are we attracting business to develop the economy, the economic. You look at the unemployment rate in that 18 to 30 range, and it's unemployment and underemployment
Uh-huh.
are both really, really high. Those are the things that we need to focus on. We will bring art because a key thing out of your story about purchasing art and appreciating the finer things and contemplating a little bit is as the budget allows.
There you go.
That's key. Brilliant. Bring it in. Everybody needs it. We do need a nice city. There are things that attract people to a city, and there are things that keep people in a city. They're kind of like hygiene factors. People don't come to a city because they've got art, and they don't decide to not come to a city because they have it or don't have it. However, when you're there, it's a hygiene factor.
Uh-huh.
It either sticks in your craw, or you think that's wonderful, and I'm just going to keep carrying on here. I'm not going to move to, say, Lethbridge, where it's a similar size city, similar economic development. I'm going to stay here because I like XYZ.
Uh-huh.
It's something that, as a council, they need to look at. Am I spending hours and hours discussing a $2 million decision and minutes discussing a $20 million decision? Where's my time spent to really bring value to the people? To what can I bring to the people? And again, for guys like us, it is thinking the what if scenarios. Okay, we're gonna spend money on, again, we'll say revitalizing downtown is always gonna be a
Yeah.
big issue. Somebody finds something, throws the idea out there. When you walk through it and you talk, okay, long term, this is a big deal because it is dollar for dollar. It's one of your best returns in a city,
Uh-huh.
is making sure that you have a safe, clean, productive, comfortable downtown core. If you don't try to poke holes in the idea, if you immediately go to falling in love with the idea and think, yep, that's wonderful because it'll look great, then you're really short sighted. And oftentimes you end up cutting off your nose to spite your face.
Yeah. I really appreciate what you said about not campaigning in the rearview mirror. I have a tendency to do that a little more than going forward. I think I've shifted. I should say I used to have a tendency of doing that. I think I'm a lot more vision directed now.
You have
But
grown. You have grown over the years I've known you.
well, thank you. Um, so my question to you is how do you, and maybe I'm just asking for advice here, where it's like, how do you do that while addressing those issues that we've run into and making sure that we don't want to? Because, of course, if we're going to change policy, we have to find out what didn't work, which then is like we have to look in the rearview mirror and be like, we need to change that, right? And so I'm trying to, in my head, just envision how do we go about communicating that effectively, right?
Absolutely. And I do this day in and day out in business. I lead teams, I lead people, and failure is inevitable. You don't learn from success. Success is a terrible teacher. You learn by falling down, scraping your knees, picking yourself up, and going, oh, well, I'm going to avoid that now. So, what I do is I like to come from a position of grace. I don't know everything that they talked about, I don't know everything that was on the table at the time. And I assume that people come into it with the best intentions.
Yeah.
And from there, I say, okay, however, this caused that.
Yeah.
We want to avoid that. And it's simply a lessons learned activity. And then you can say, all right, I found the flaws, I found what I think is the root cause.
Uh-huh.
And now I'm just going to avoid that. And again, poke holes in my new ideas
Uh-huh.
to imagine. One exercise I really love is when people come up with ideas, have the whole group say, answer, what would make this fail?
Yeah, yeah.
And you go at it rigorously and almost, with intent to kill, because that's how the good ideas survive. And if you're looking in the past, you do have to, you're correct. It's where you put your focus. So you pull the information from the past and you focus on the future.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. It really involves a tearing down of your own ego, right?
Bingo.
And because if you're going to be, and I don't think we really realize how much of an ego we have until we feel pained because something happened.
Mm.
And I think we're all on a journey, right? Hopefully to get rid of the ego. But I think that's a big area. Like you hit the nail on the head as far as what we need to do, where we need to look. And I'm just trying to think of how we do that, how to communicate that properly, because people with ego won't take it very well. And if you have a group of people and, there's 8 counselors and a mayor, and 3 of them still have maintained an ego, you're gonna have some fighting to do. I don't know my question here, but I'm just talking like,
Well, I always like to take it down the path as well of you are always going to have people who are at a different place emotionally,
yeah,
mentally, spiritually. And when you're going through ideas, the key there is to set your ground rules early and put those fences around your discussions. I like to tell people this meeting is a decision meeting. I want you to eliminate I think I feel. I want you to bring I know I don't know.
uh-huh.
Once people, it primes them and it gets them moving down the path of a much more succinct and less ideological discussion. Gets the everybody moving along the same direction.
Uh-huh.
You are still going to have people who are anywhere from less informed to downright obstinate. As a leader of, ideally, we're looking at a city of over 100,000 people. We need to be equipped and be humble enough to find when we're not equipped to do that, to
Hmm.
lead that. And there's all kinds of opportunities to learn, to grow, and develop.
Yeah.
I definitely, and I don't know what happens in the city and in the council in terms of leadership development courses offered, things like that. But that will definitely be something that I bring
Yeah.
is make sure that everybody has a good understanding of a particular framework of leadership and modeling, and then that keeps things on track. You don't have people wandering around aimlessly when we need everybody coming down this path, right?
Yeah, totally. Let's shift into ideas.
Yeah.
What ideas do you have for the city? I know that's a broad question,
Eh,
so a little
yeah,
unfair.
for sure. I really haven't had a lot of time to dissect and
Yeah,
move
it's early.
forward. I have found very quickly that when you look at the bell curve, there's two groups. There's the group that knows exactly what they want from the city
Yeah.
and what they don't want, and they'll tell you.
Yeah.
And there's the group that don't know, don't care.
Yeah.
And in between is where I like to think the good ideas live and the real interaction lives.
Yeah.
The folks that have come to me, there's quite a bit on development. I'm the chairman of the board for the Habitat for Humanity here in town. Affordable housing is very important to me. It's something that is a driving force. And where the developments are going to be put, red tape, we have to eliminate, or well, at least cut red tape. There's neighborhoods that are more than a year behind because of red tape. Now, look at Capstone, and I've heard critical, I've heard some people saying it's fine. That won't do just to fill the new jobs at the hospital expansion.
Yeah, I know.
It's and right now, apparently, the contractors have secured all of the units because they need places for their staff to live to build it.
Wow.
So if we could get some developments going where we partner with the federal, the provincial, and industry. If, say for instance, Nova Chemicals was gonna double that entire site,
Yeah.
they're and I don't want to speak for them, but they have such a good neighbor policy that they would put resources towards how do we make sure these people are housed?
Yeah.
If we can start attracting businesses, and this is where the second and third order consequences thinking comes in. If we attract big business, I mean, Alberta Health Services, that's going to be the number one employer in this
Yeah.
region. We kind of need them to come to the table with housing solutions as well,
Hmm.
because it's going to hurt them if they can't get people in houses. There's no two ways about it. Those are the kind of things where we say, all right, we'll zone this and we'll give you this type of permitting if you come to the table with support, ideas, help,
Hmm.
that kind of thing. So there's a lot of options in that for housing developments.
Uh-huh.
And going past the housing developments back to attracting business, we do have to make it more attractive here. There's
Yeah.
no two ways about it. The county is eating our lunch and it's noticeable. I remember talking to another guy, and I don't know if he wants me to use his name, but because he's fairly well
Don't worry
known in
about
the
it. Just you
community.
can just mention whoever.
It was Darcy McAtician,
Okay.
great guy, incredible thinker. I really have a lot of respect for him. And he said, we have to make Red Deer more than just Gasoline Alley. And that was such an eye opener for me when you start to think that is really what it's become. People go, they stop for a burger and bathroom
Yeah.
break, and then they head on out.
Yeah.
So there's quite a few different things. I'm curious on your side of it. What are you thinking?
I have a lot of ideas. They need to be fleshed out a little more. Like my big worry right now is just people aren't able to afford life.
Yeah.
And so my ideas all have to be in the perspective that if I am making life more difficult for the people that live here by having some sort of tax and spend sort of project that I want to do, then I'm going against the people, right? And so I'm really trying to figure out how to do that, quite frankly, because my ideas are very budget based, and like we really need to gain control of our finances in the city, and we need to find out where the money is going. Like I think that's the number one thing. If we saw major developments and people can say, well, of course the taxes are 10% more because we're building a beautiful city. You can see it here, you can see it there, you can, and yet right now people are complaining that lawns haven't been mowed. We're not putting any money into the simple things to keep our city beautiful. And then they see things like the bridge renovation, and they see things, and I'm just I really want to just find out where the money is going and just spread it out. But publicly, we don't need this all behind closed doors. Just tell the people, and then we can go from there and be like, how do we want to build this city? Now, ideas, I still would love to see a pool, but it's one of those things where it might take a full term to be like, here's how we get there. Like we've been doing the 50-meter pool discussion for 15 years here. And I would love to see that just from the perspective of, like you said, we need to bring people here. I think that would enable Red Deer to become a tourism destination for those tournaments, and it would pay for itself at the end of the day. But we need to do the legwork to make sure we're not going to put ourselves into debt to do all that. Like, or a debt where it doesn't actually pay for itself, where we have to increase taxes.
And that right there, I just have to jump in because again, you go to the long-term consequences. It's too easy to massage the numbers and say this is going
Oh,
to pay for itself. We, as representatives of the people, we have to come with facts and data. If we come with feelings and intuitions, that's where the roadmap, as you were saying,
yeah,
where we're spending our money, if it was on infrastructure and we could say, okay, here's the model of we have to expand, we'll go into the nice, easy solution, the sewers, the electric light and power, various utilities. We have to expand them first before we get the tax base. So we're going to
yeah,
go into a bit of a down, but here's the growth
yeah,
projections. So those are the things that I think that we would be able to bring really well is the roadmap and the vision.
yeah, yeah. I think you're absolutely right. One thing, I mean, it's been all over the headlines. I've been making noise was the blanket rezoning. And one thing that was rarely brought up with the blanket rezoning, and they say it's done. I don't think it is. I think we still have lots to fight on it. But one thing is like, okay, if you're going to add all these apartments to this one area, or fourplexes, eightplexes, just whatever, how is that going to affect the sewer system? How is that going to affect
Yeah.
all these infrastructure needs? And then like, where's the money going to come from that? Because $12 million that we were going to get is peanuts when it comes to those type of infrastructure changes that we need, right?
Completely. The infrastructure of a neighborhood is going to eat $12 million like that.
Yeah. Looking long term, looking at things from more than one angle. And I really like what you say as far as poking holes into things. I think I really try to do that, but you say it much more eloquently than me. So you're a smart guy, Adam. I can tell that you've been doing this for
I
years,
appreciate that.
and that you really care, and that you can bring a lot of value to the table.
Thank you.
So
I appreciate that. I have worked to develop myself and move myself. I'm a builder and a protector.
Yeah.
That's my personality type. And in order to build somebody else up, I had to work at building myself up
Yeah.
because, you just, I can share skills, I can share ideas, I can share knowledge.
Mhm.
And Red Deer, and this is a big part of why I'm running. Red Deer has been pivotal as an opportunity at every stage. When I moved out here, I had dropped out of high school and I came here and I was working construction. I was over Hunting Hills was one of my first construction jobs.
Really?
And as I went through, I upgraded, got my advanced diploma, got into power engineering, got a great job out at Nova Chemicals, and worked various places in this region. Red Deer has, and Central Alberta has always been a place where there's opportunity, and I see that stalling.
Yeah.
And I can't, with any good conscience, sit back and go, "Oh, hey, this is what got me here,"
Yeah.
and not try to get that engine moving
Yeah.
again.
I think that our city has a lot of potential. Like we're just sitting on a gold mine here. And it takes that leadership to be able to, well, one, see it and really, nourish it. Like you
Yeah,
can't just sit on it. You have to do something about it, but not in a way where it's ego, right? Because right now people are saying, "Oh, Red Deer's growing." It is growing. It's people actually want to come here, but then that's an offshoot from Calgary pricing. The only reason people are looking at Red Deer, and this isn't a negative thing, is because they recognize us as a significantly cheaper place to live,
yeah,
right? So when our homes are 450 to $500,000 and Calgary's are 800,000, well, people are naturally going to come here, and so we've seen significant growth. And I want people to come to Red Deer because they want to come to Red Deer.
exactly. Intentional growth
Intentional, yeah,
rather than knock-on effect of somebody
yeah.
else's activities.
Yeah. Because there's no ownership of Red Deer in there. And I feel like I have an ownership of Red Deer. I want to protect this place and see it grow. And the people that come here, I want them to share that ownership. And I think there's a knockoff effect of people coming that, just come here for pricing, right? They care less about crime in general. They care less about, the beauty of the city. There's no investment here, right? Now maybe there'll be a large portion of those people that, grow into that, but then there'll be people that the first opportunity they have, they'll just leave and that'll be a bad thing.
Exactly. I have two or three stories of people. My one neighbor here, again, fantastic young family, came here from BC, bought the house basically sight unseen
Yeah.
because there's no way they were ever going to be able to afford a house there.
Yeah.
And they did the research and they said Red Deer's got opportunities. Red Deer's
Yeah.
got, you look around and it is beautiful. It's got beautiful areas. We've got great trails, great parks. So they just went, yep, done.
Yeah.
And when we're looking for somebody at the Habitat for Humanity, we're hiring a CEO right now, and same story. Him and his wife came to this area because where they were never going to be able to buy a house. Two professionals, two skilled, very intelligent, articulate professionals had no option. And they came here and now they're living the life they want. That's what we need to foster and grow.
Yeah. One thing that, so I moved here to Red Deer in 2010. Um, and it was very important for me. Well, we chose Red Deer because my wife lived here, right? So she moved a whole bunch and we lived up in Grand Prairie. And this was just, work was getting kind of exhausting up there. I was a young guy and I felt like I was being treated unfairly. And just like, well, why don't we go to Red Deer? Right? So this was our home. And so we naturally moved down here and grew my home or grew my family here. When we moved down here, we had one kid and now we have five.
That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. It's we love kids. We just there's some people that I think, they have kids and they have a family and it's just kind of like thrust into them. Whereas like my wife was born to have children. Like she is such an amazing woman and I'm so
That's
thankful for
that's
her.
that's terrific. I love to see a family. I have a cousin who, her and her husband, professionals, four kids, four amazing kids. Well, you
Yeah,
can tell that they were cared for all their lives. And that makes a ton of difference. It's not a kid's there. It's I have somebody more important than me. I have
yeah,
something that I need to,
yeah,
in my case, grow and protect. right?
Yeah. I think that's why a lot of my development in life is, when I moved here, I had one child, and it's one thing to have a, 6-year-old, 7-year-old. You can only die to yourself according to the needs of that 6 and 7-year-old. As your children grow and become older, teenagers, and everything changes, and I'm going through that right now. My oldest is 16, right? It's like you have to continually learn how to die to yourself more and more and more, right? Not to give them a perfect life. They have to live life. They have to struggle,
Yeah,
but to recognize there are people more important than you. At the
yeah,
end of the day, if it means that you're going to eat or I'm going to eat, well, I'm going to give up my food, right?
yeah.
And that goes for everything in life, where it's you have to put people above you. And in a way, we're running for council, and maybe it's too poetic, but in a way, but I think that's really what people want their councillors to do, where it's like you're getting elected and we want you to put the city above a lot of your own personal desires and needs. And that means communicating, that means listening, that means just
Checking your ego.
checking your ego. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Right?
100%.
Like one thing I really want to do is just increase the amount of communication the city has. And there's tools and there's methods that we can do, especially today. I mean, I know AI is a big iffy thing, right? But I think that we can utilize that to connect people to the city a lot better. It's a tool in my mind of
That's right.
like until it becomes sentient, then we shut it all off. Right?
Yeah. Be
But
careful, it's listening.
oh no. Good. So if I said anything stupid so far, that's just AI, adapting this. But I do think that we need to utilize the technology of today, and I think that's a good thing. We need to be careful. We need to have safeguards. I don't love looking at AI 15 years into the future where we're going to be. I think that, that's a different conversation to a certain degree. But we have such opportunity right now to streamline how we're able to communicate with people. And I think that's all what people really want. They want to know what's going on. They want fair taxes. And a lot of people don't want to think about the city, right? They don't want to think, I have to call the city because this road is a disaster. They just want to go to work, right? And I think our job is really to take care of that for them, to just like you take care of your children. Like, how many things do you do for your children that they have no clue?
And I
Right?
really like that
I'm not
analogy.
calling I'm not calling the city my children, by the way.
No, no,
I'm just saying that you learn how to die to yourself,
that's right.
and that prepares you for the position of a counselor.
And I like that statement that they don't want to think about the city, and they
Yeah,
shouldn't have to.
yeah,
There's no reason that the average person needs to step out of their house and be mindful that they don't trip on a crack in the sidewalk.
uh-huh.
They shouldn't drive to work and think, okay, well, my car is maybe or maybe not going to be able to make it because of the potholes. It
Yeah,
needs to be just everything runs.
yeah,
It's like utilities. I've been involved in hydro and electric utilities and power
uh-huh.
utilities. Long gone are the days of mean time between failure and mean time to bring it back up and get everything going. It is always on.
Mhm.
That's what people need. And it's exactly what you're getting at with council, governance, and then
Yeah,
directing operations. Everything just needs to be seamless.
yep. And there's going to be bumps in the road, you know. There's the pun, but there's going to be issues every now and then. But one thing I've always thought is like, how come our back alleys aren't maintained? Because if you're not able to get out of your back alley because big snowstorm and then they're not maintained for a month. If you can't get out of your back alley to go to work, you just lost 300-400 bucks for that day. And then it's like, screw the tax increase. I wish that was done because I have to go to work, right? Or I have to take my kids to the Colicut for swimming lessons. And here I am slipping and sliding because you have massive ruts and stuff like that. Now, I don't have all the answers for that. I'm sure there's people smarter than me, much smarter than me, that would be able to explain why that happens. But it's going back to these core services, and people don't want to have to think about that. And that's kind of our job.
And that's a great way to tie in AI
Yeah.
and advanced tools. There are places where all of those things work. I don't have time to research every single city, what the factors are, how effective it is. I send a paid version that does a deep research, and what would take me 12 hours to build, I can take a half an hour and go through it and
Yeah.
look and verify it. And right there, now we have opportunity for the idea
Yeah.
funnel to grow exponentially.
Yeah. I think what you said as far as, you're going to take your time to verify everything because whenever I use these tools, they can lie to you. They're
And they
not
will.
perfect and they will. And you have to go back and you have to make sure, is this true? Like, oh, this looks like a great idea. I need to make sure, is this true? Where are all the articles about it? Or can I, go down a different city's annual report to find out about this? Because it's always needs to be backstopped by human intelligence, right?
Absolutely, because my statement and the way I look at it is it's not artificial intelligence, it's augmented intelligence.
Yes.
You feed it very smart stuff, you're going to get smarter. You feed it very
Yeah.
retrograde stuff, it's going to come out very useless and misleading and harmful. You really have to be cognizant of, all right, I'm asking it a good question. First and foremost, if I ask this question to an eighth grader, would they be able to
Mhm.
figure out what I'm asking? And then you go through, and I had a great tip from a guy at work who works for me. He says, when I'm, say, going through a manual or a legal document or something like that, when he specifically asks it, cite the paragraph that
Mhm.
you're pulling key information out of. And then that just helps him peruse through it faster.
Yeah.
And, there's all kinds of great little tips and tools, but the main point is use it for what it's there for. You will always have to have a human backstopping it.
Absolutely.
And I don't believe that it will ever get to the point where it becomes sentient. There's probably people right now, their heads are exploding. However, I do, it's not that I'm selling it short. It's that I think people who imagine that this is just going to overtake humans are selling humans short.
Uh-huh.
Human ingenuity is an incredibly powerful force, and we have created things. There was people who openly demanded the destruction of the Gutenberg printing press
Uh-huh.
because it was going to do horrible things and spread bad ideas
Yeah.
and all of this. Of course, there's going to be people who use things poorly, and it's going to turn out awful for them.
Yeah.
And there are people that are going to use things for ill intent.
Yeah.
But those of us who ensure that we keep the intellectual rigor
Yeah.
and verify, and again, poke holes in everything,
Yeah.
go at it and make sure that what would make this wrong is always part of it.
Yeah.
Then
Well,
it'll be,
new technology is always scary, and I think that in a sense we need to acknowledge that it is scary, and not from a
yeah,
government standpoint. Be like, you need to use this. Like everything that I want to do with technology is to enhance,
yeah,
right? It's not to say, well, we're gonna do away with that and throw that part away and only do this new thing. It's that we really want to enhance for people that want to go there, right? We have
yes.
to build a city for the people that in a way that we want the people want us to, right? And it's just like anything new, like the debit card. People were scared about debit cards. People were scared about like the internet. This is like probably the closest thing to just the internet, right? Where people are like, I'm not touching that thing, and now it's a part of your life. It's improved
I'm
efficiency so much.
I'm old enough to remember the microwave coming out. And the
You're
microwave,
not that old.
the first, well, microwaves first came out in the 70s or the 50s, late 50s, but they became in the 70s
Wait,
and
Adam.
80s.
How old are you?
I'm 52.
You're 52.
Yeah. So
You look
I,
good.
oh, well, thanks. I appreciate
I'm gonna
that.
have to ask you what you do because I'm looking forward to this campaign because I'm gonna lose a little bit of my belly here from walking so
Definitely.
much.
I absolutely live by the 80-20 rule. 80% good, 20% do what you want.
Yeah,
Be reasonable. I try to exercise on a regular
yeah,
basis, eat decent. I don't want to, pretend like anybody's going to need to reach out for, nutrition advice. However, yeah, I just like to keep busy, keep active, and, live the life that I would want
yeah,
my kids and my grandkids to live.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Sorry, I
Yeah,
distracted you there
no
by
worries.
you know.
But the point being, every major, you're correct. Every major technology change comes around, and there are people who will drive fear. I always go back to my second and third order consequence thinking. Somebody that's driving fear, what do they have to gain from it? Sometimes it is just an emotional comfort thing, but sometimes they're saying, no, you need to be afraid of this. Come follow me. I'll protect you. And that's misguided. And that's where you get people taking
Mhm.
groups down the wrong path. Oftentimes it's mostly people who are just uh, not knowing something is a scary thing. That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
One thing that I've learned is if you want to make somebody very, very angry, be less afraid of things than they are. They will absolutely go off if you are slightly dismissive of things that they're afraid of.
Mhm.
You really have to approach it in a certain way. And I think, we learned that through the response to COVID, where there was fear on both sides of the
Yeah.
conversation. There was fear of your rights going away, and there was fear of this illness evolving
Yeah.
into the bubonic plague. So when you deal with people, when you deal with the new technology, you have to again come from a position of grace and foster them along while still making them understand that, yeah, I'm putting the life jacket on you, but I'm going to get you in the pool. That's all there is to it because it's unavoidable. And you
Uh-huh.
just kind of bring them along that way.
Switching gears there a little bit. One thought that I have is downtown and the homelessness issue that we have. That's combined with the addiction issue, combined with the vagrancy issue, which I mean goes right hand in hand. Downtown's a very difficult thing for me to discuss because it's one of those things where I want to see it do well, but yet I don't want my family going downtown,
Yeah.
right? And that's an issue because if I'm feeling that, there's a lot of other, fathers and mothers that are feeling the same way about their children. Would I ever let my kids, my teenage kids, bike downtown? No, I would say you're not doing that. Like I need to protect you, right? And we need to build a city that isn't like that. But yet we need to have a level of compassion on the people that are going through struggles.
It's a tough
All
balance.
right. And so I don't actually believe that the government has the ability to be compassionate because people are in government. The people are compassionate, right? So there's no way we can pass a law that is this is the compassionate law because no matter what you're doing there is you're going to pull something from someone else and give it to someone else,
Yeah.
which that concept I'm against. So how, and this might be an unfair question. It's kind of just out of the blue here, but it's like, how do we foster that? And are there policies that we can put in place to fix this issue? Because I don't have all the answers. I'm going to speak for you and say you don't have all the answers. But I've been thinking a lot about this because I have friends on both sides of this issue. I naturally am like, we need to shut it down and we need to get rid of it. I'm thankful that the needle injection site shut down just because of that 15, 20 year looking long term. I have friends that vehemently are opposed to that, like good friends. And we've had long discussions about this. And I'm listening to them. I'm like, you have some great points that I need to think deeper on, right? So I know that I have that I'm wrong in my thinking on some of that point. I just don't know where to go. And so I'm trying to think, I'm looking at this spider web and that's the way I look at a lot of stuff is it's a spider web and everything needs to connect. I'm having a hard time making it all connect, right? And so I'm trying to think if I'm a counselor, how will I approach this, right? Obviously, we need shelters. Like obviously, we need policing, we need justice for those that are doing wrong, right? I'm trying to view it from a point though of how can I make it so my 16-year-old can bike downtown
Yeah.
and not be fearful and legitimately fearful. Where if I was down with her and I saw something happen, I might have to go to jail, right? Because I would be so protective of her. Do you have any thoughts on that? Like, sorry for putting you on the spot here because it's a deep question and I'm working through it myself and I'm trying to show people that I don't have all the answers here, but I'm trying to work through it.
It is an intractable issue. It's one of those ones that there is no single answer for. I did some postgraduate work in applied neuroscience, and we covered a lot of mental health issues. And obviously, that goes into addiction issues and how different regions deal with it. And I will start off with I don't have an answer. You're correct. I don't have uh, a way of just saying, let's go after this, go after that. This is one that you need strong governance
Mhm.
and a lot of research. And this is, again, another opportunity to use AI. Find regions where this doesn't seem to be a problem and find out what they're doing. Now, somebody will
It's
say,
going to be hard right now. It seems like everywhere it's a problem. Like
and
I don't want to pick on red deer because this isn't just a red deer issue.
no, it most certainly isn't. It's everywhere. It's rampant because I think society has done a very poor job of giving people coping skills
Mm.
from school all the way through. What we do now is we give people safe spaces, not coping skills. Giving people coping skills is a lot harder. It's a lot more work. It's a lot more emotionally intensive.
It's difficult to learn that.
Yeah. And so when you start going down that path, so there's where I love this saying. Krista from my work, she pulled this saying, instead of pulling
Shout out to
babies,
Krista.
instead of pulling babies out of the river all the time, why don't we go upriver and find out why they're being thrown in there?
Mm,
And this is again another, let's go back to the root of the problem and we'll start there. It's like health. How do you limit your healthcare expenses? Well, you promote fitness and nutrition. And it takes a while, but it works through the system and off it goes. Right now, we've let this get to a point where there is no silver bullet. However, we have to go back to the root, start there so that 5, 10 years from now, this is a greatly reduced problem.
mhm,
If we start talking mental health to kids, reducing the stigma of talking about these things, reducing the stigma of family abuse and harm, things like that, we get people talking about it. You shine a light on a shadow and a shadow goes away.
yeah.
Bringing people up that way. I really think that the only solutions are going to be something that you're going to have to wait 2 and 3 years to see the fruit of planting that seed.
Yeah. One thing I try to teach my children is to do hard things. Right. I was just talking to one of my children yesterday how the more we do hard things, the easier those things become, and then we become a different person because we did it. Right. And so these experiences that we have, they are genuinely difficult, and they're supposed to be hard. Life isn't supposed to be easy.
Exactly.
And I'm like, when the next hard thing is done, then you need to find another one. Right. And that's like a way to grow yourself to not only cope with issues, but to really push through everything and to become successful.
Uh,
Right. And I don't know if that's part of the conversation where,
Absolutely. There's a couple of things that I use that same line of thinking.
yeah,
You do hard things, and I will say though, I'll put my spin on it. They don't get easier. You get better at them.
yeah,
It's like lifting weights. If you The weight doesn't get easier to move. It's weight, it's physics. That's how it is. You get stronger and it moves
yeah,
better and you move it better. So when you're dealing with mental fortitude, people moving forward and overcoming issues, you have to make them very, very clear that it's okay to fail.
uh-huh,
We live in a world where you go to school, you've got standardized testing, you've got, you either get an A, B, C, D, but ultimately it comes down to you to pass or fail.
yeah,
And it's okay to fail as long as we'll go back to your ideas and the prolific number of ideas you have. It's okay to have duds. It's okay.
in fact, it's a necessary part of your growth. Like
Absolutely.
you're not going to grow unless you have those failures.
Yeah.
Right.
I think there was a saying I saw, be brave enough to suck at something new. And that's critical. You got
Hey,
to
I'm doing a podcast. Thanks for joining.
That's right. You're learning, you're developing
Yeah.
and growing as you go. It's fantastic. And that's what people need to understand is back to your statement, life is not supposed to be easy.
Yeah.
It isn't supposed to be brutal either. Don't get me wrong.
No, no.
At the same time though, an easy life is generally a life wasted. You look at
Mhm,
people who are born into money, born into luxury, they are very rarely extremely happy.
mhm,
And they're very rarely able. to foster growth and development in others around them. They don't know what it's like to struggle and
Mhm.
get turned down for a job time and time again until you finally find one. They don't understand that. And having that mix of
Mhm.
people who say, okay, look, I've done this 100 times and I've failed.
Mhm.
99. Okay, brilliant. But you didn't give up. Keep going. And that will foster again long term, that will help get rid of the mental health issues. Sorry, it won't get rid of them. That oversimplifies it. And that's unfair to people.
Sure.
What it does is
It's
it,
another gear.
yeah, it helps people deal with them better
Yes.
because again, they don't get easier. You get better at dealing with
Yeah. One thing I've really grown in the last 5 years or so was just focusing on maybe focusing is the wrong word, but just the idea of ruminating on things, right? And how when you're ruminating on something, the issue gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's always in your own head. Like we have to take where we are now and move forward. But interesting conversation, anyways, because
it. It is always interesting. And it's one of those things that I love to frame this one up as it has to be action oriented. We're going
yeah,
to talk about mental health, okay? We're not going to ruminate. We're going to talk about ideas to get out of the trough that we're in. And
hmm
that's how I like to really bring people along on that because if people are left to feel miserable, my favorite I worked with a guy, he was absolutely miserable all the time. And
we all know that person.
right? And he says, "Adam, you're always the effing chipper. Why?" And I said, "Look, I
You were
don't know
probably making him angry by being chipper.
until he asked me." And I said, "I don't know how to make your day better, but I know me being miserable won't do it. So you got me this way." And off I went. And from then on, he actually kind of opened up to, "Oh, okay, you're not doing this to spite me." Because that's oftentimes what people think. They get in that negative rumination and it makes this horrible cycle in their limbic loop. He was just realizing that Adam's just chipper and it has nothing to do with me.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
that's
So
awesome.
taking people out of their zone sometimes.
Yeah. So just going back to downtown a little bit,
Yeah.
is there any specific ideas that you have? It's okay. I mean, if you don't have any specific ideas there, I'm like we've gone through some good discussion as far as like the what we need to do as a culture. I don't know how much our city has a I don't know how much we as a city want to get involved in mental health. I see it as a provincial thing. But then it's a provincial responsibility because it is health, but then it affects us.
That's right.
And if
Who
we
lives
could
with
take
it?
care of it, yeah, yeah, exactly. So I'm trying to figure out, like I said, the spider web of it all, and like the mental health thing. I think that's really good. I think the discussion we had is really good as far as acknowledging that this is a lot deeper than just lock them up, right? Now, of course,
Absolutely.
if you're doing a crime, yeah, right. Like there's a lot of I think there's a lot of people downtown Red Deer that aren't doing crimes. They're just down on their luck. And quite frankly, if it wasn't for the grace of God, I think I mean all of us could be there.
We've all had that fork
We've
in the
all had
road in
lows.
front of us. Guaranteed. Some people may have never noticed it, may just never acknowledge it, but we have all had that opportunity, we'll call it, to take the path downward and into a downward spiral. And it is mental health though. That's the root of it all. Now, how you foster and develop improved mental health, again, I had a professor who in the neuroscience program, I loved he was very critical of the psychopharmaceuticals industry. And
Okay.
he said that the worst thing for people's mental health was developing Prozac back in whatever it was, the 50s or something like
Mm,
that, because it stopped almost immediately put a lid on all talking therapies, all skill set therapies,
mhm.
personal based therapies. And a lot of them, a lot of people find great relief from symptoms and great
Oh, of course.
success with it. Totally. All he was saying was that if we didn't have that lever to pull, we would have to pull our other levers harder, and we would learn better, and we would learn to get people through the system better. I kind of agree with that mostly. I do know that psychopharmaceuticals have improved the quality of life for people all over the world. I also know that they have damaged the quality of life for people all over the world. The city can't get involved in that. Doesn't have the reach, the means, the jurisdiction, or anything like that. All we can focus on is what do we do with the folks that are going through these problems. And again, I don't have a terrific answer other than start early, develop, and that'll get us 5, 10 years down the road, things really smoothed out. In the immediacy, I'm going to be doing more research on that and finding jurisdictions that have success.
Hmm.
Look for other people's ideas. There's oftentimes, you don't need to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And there are cities that are doing really unique things with housing. I think that big part of that is developing partnerships,
Yeah,
because we as a city can't do it all, right? I mean, like I said, this is a provincial responsibility with mental health, but we sit here and deal with it every single day,
that's
and
right.
so we have to work with the province of how do we make sure that these people are housed, right? How do we make sure we get them in a house? Because one thing that's really frustrating to me is how much money we are going or we are putting towards sustaining their lifestyle. And if we just shift that money somewhere else, the stats, as far as I'm aware, show that once someone has housing, the rate of success goes up dramatically. And so it sounds really weird because it seems like, oh, you're being a socialist. But I'm like, if we take the money we have now and do something new with it that's never been done, or maybe we look to cities that have done this and see their success rates and just shift it, right? Maybe we don't need 15 organizations. I just made up that number, but maybe we don't need those organizations downtown. So many of them focus on the same thing, all their staff drawing a salary. And then all of a sudden we have, 10 grants and eight of them can go towards housing and success models, and two of them can remain with, dealing with the people that are in struggle or life crisis right
Another plug for the Habitat for Humanity. If you
now.
go to Habitat for Humanity's Canada's website, there is a massive study on
Yeah.
the positive effects of housing, and it is phenomenal. The things that you wouldn't even expect. There's a double-digit increase in post-secondary education for children who grow up in a home that the family owns.
Yeah.
It's now people can dispute whether post-secondary education is that great of a thing or not, but it is we'll call it a hurdle for a lot of people where they just can't even consider it. It's not even an option for them
Yeah.
because they're living hand to mouth. Some of the statistics in that report are flooring, and it would 100% make the average person more interested in developing good, affordable housing.
Yeah. One thing I would like to do, and here's an idea, is I would like to take some of the city land that we have that is clearly meant for housing, that is not being used, and to develop a tiny home community, not necessarily a tiny home, let's say 400 square feet instead of 100, and integrate these into some of the other communities and use those as a mini Habitat for Humanity house in a sense, right? Where they do have equity, right? They do have ownership of it. It is their land, and it might look a little funny. We might have to get used to it. But if we develop communities with the purpose of having a few of these in a community, then I think that would help a lot, because the idea in my mind is we don't want to just put people in housing just to sustain them. We want them to grow. We want them to
Exactly.
have their own life. We want them to have a job, and then take part in society the way that everyone else does, right? We don't want to see them go back. And so I think having a housing solution that actually allows people to gain some equity would be amazing. We're not going to do that with the minimum housing price in Red Deer being basically 400 grand now.
Absolutely. Uh, so a bit of a plug for the current administration. They just sold us a lot for half price. It was a phenomenal step up on their part to get that in. And while we're going through the planning phase, people are looking at minimum. $240, $280 a square foot for the house. That's not after
Yeah.
you've purchased the land, run the utilities, all the rest of it. That's a substantial amount
Yeah.
of money.
Well, and housing has gone up so much. I remember talking to a builder about 5 years ago, and they were shocked that they had to raise their increases. And this was a decent builder to about 245, $245 per square foot.
Yeah.
That was from 210 because the prices just went insane. This was pre-COVID. And before that, it was around 180, about 15 years ago. And we're not slowing down, right? And now I read a report a couple of days ago where the average price, I'm not sure if it's Red Deer or Alberta, was well into the 300s. And that's not just, like you said, that's the home,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's not the lot.
You're not even looking at how much it costs to move into the house, how much it costs to
Maintain the house,
maintain the
right?
house. There is so much to consider when you're looking at housing people. And this is one of the big misunderstandings of the habitat. People think Habitat for Humanity gives people houses, like it's some kind of
Yeah.
lottery, and it's not that. It's vetting, it's understanding, it's teaching them how to manage being a homeowner.
Hmm.
They purchase the house, they pay the bills, they pay the mortgage. It does give it to them affordably because there's no interest and there's no down payment. However, all of those benefits that the habitat teaches people. So the city can run systems like that, or
Yeah.
again, shameless plug, build up the organizations. There are other organizations that do generally the same thing. Build them up to provide other people with these skill sets. There are people who buy a house, move into a house, and have no idea what they're getting into, and
Hmm.
then have it all fall apart on them, literally and figuratively, and they become economically ruined because know they didn't have the skill set to run a house, maintain a house, all those
Hmm.
things. From a city's perspective, we can help that. We can really help that.
Yeah.
Start at the high school. Again, think about the next generation. You're planting a seed. And then people who are renting, bring them in. Here's a free information session. Here's what it takes to buy a house. Here's what
Yeah.
people who have been renting their whole lives.
And habitat requires an ownership level from the people that are moving in, correct? Where how many hours is it? Is it 500 hours that
Yeah.
they need to put into it? I know someone that got a habitat house
Awesome.
elsewhere, and I didn't know the complete system, but I know that they were, they had their job, but they were taking off weekends, they were taking off nights, and they were going as a family to work on the house.
Yeah.
And there was people to lead them on how to do things, and they had to put their own blood and sweat into the house, right? There was no just automatic, here's a home.
Yeah.
Now, how does it work as far as is it kind of like there's no interest payments until you afford the down payment, or like how does that work? I'm just genuinely curious on that.
There's different mortgage models in different regions.
Okay.
We, my understanding, and I will apologize to anybody in the Habitat organization if I miss this a little bit. I've really only been a part of it for a year, and
You
I
have to know
learned.
everything. Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
As
But
soon as you're elected, you have to know everything that's going on, Adam.
right. So what we do is once they qualify, which is a very rigorous process, it's a no interest, no down payment mortgage.
Yeah.
So that's it. It's just principal. Now, the flip side of that is they don't gain equity based on market rate. They gain equity based on what they pay against the principal.
Okay.
So it's a great starting, and we have so many people, and actually this year alone, I think we've had two or three where the people have said, yeah, I've got myself sorted out. I've got it. And now I have the down payment for a house that I'll get all the equity in. And
Uh-huh.
so we buy it back at rate, and
Yeah.
then they get to take what equity they did build, which oftentimes isn't a whole lot, but they take that, and then they get into a place where because they've learned all the skills and they understand what the equity
Mhm.
means and they understand how the down payment works and CMHC works.
Let me ask you an odd question, and you might not have the answer for this. How does that affect the overall market as far as does that cause a problem in the, like, there's home builders that build, there's home builders that need to make money to sustain, right, their businesses, and in a way it's like, well, if the government's going to get more involved with it, which sounds great, how are we manipulating the market by doing that, or are we shifting things too much?
If we were to wave a magic wand and build the number of houses that are needed in that fashion, yes, we would move the market. For the amount that gets done, while it makes a good strong impact on the families, and then you got your, concentric rings of influence around that,
Yeah.
it doesn't negatively impact a region. If anything, it increases it, because you've got lots that oftentimes sit empty because they're too expensive. You've
Uh-huh.
got houses that people buy as speculation houses, and they become sometimes predatory landlords.
Hmm.
You're helping to avoid those types of things in the same sense that you're saying, okay, yeah, now I can help bring this family up
Yeah.
and get them to where they need to be.
And it sounds like it's a little bit of a timing issue too, where you, you just have to suss out where the market is, right? If there might be sometimes where 6 months is like we can't do anything right now because the market's too vulnerable, and then all of a sudden the market's going crazy right now, right? As far as building, and it has been for the past couple of years, which is a great thing. And if you're going to build now, you're just going to be that little pin drop in the pile, right?
That's right.
So it's one of those things where I think maybe strategically, but I really like that idea as far as, having partners and doing
For
something a
sure.
little different.
Let the people do what they love to do. The city, I oftentimes find that leadership, administrations, wherever it is, whether it's in an organization, an NGO, a government organization, whatever, people feel that they need to touch everything. And that's not the case. Governance is about making sure that the right people are doing the right things at the right time. It's not about doing everything all the time. You've got to pick and choose where you push your resources. And that also is back to your point about finding leaks in the budget. Am I touching things that I don't need to touch?
Totally. Yeah.
And this is where really good, effective governance is about asking the question, do I need to be there?
Yeah.
Okay, yes. And if yes or no, no,
Hmm.
back up. If yes, in what capacity do I need to be there? That's where governance really comes into a very effective model of governance, because you can't have governance acting like operations.
Hmm.
Because once you get, I always like to use the analogy of gears. The gears touch, the teeth touch, and energy's transferred and things move smoothly. When you start looking at Venn diagrams, you're wasting. Everything overlaps and it's just a horrible waste. So look at it effectively. Housing, okay, I don't need to be the solution to everything. I need to find the solution, but I don't need to be it. Let's let those groups that are good at what they do, they have the infrastructure, let's let them do it.
Well, I think that's really good, Adam. I think that you have something there. I think with the
I'm
alternate
excited.
solutions, yeah, I think it's worth being excited. I think that people listening to this will be excited. 'Cause, I mean, how much have you heard about the eightplex issue or the fourplex issue, the blanket rezoning?
Fair bit, because again, housing, affordable housing
Yeah.
is near and dear to my heart. I was glad that Red Deer rejected. I heard a rumor. I heard that Toronto said, okay, great, we'll take your money, but we're not going to do what you asked us.
Yeah, they did.
That's beautiful.
That is beautiful. And
There's
then
nothing
there was
wrong with
another city. So it was Red Deer is basically amongst two that basically said that. Red Deer didn't say pound sand. Toronto did, right? Where Toronto's like, oh, we're not giving you the money back because we need this money to do stuff, right? Now, I'm glad they did away with the fourplex issue. I don't think we're done because they said they still could meet the outcomes. And so they didn't actually get rid of the corridors. So in my mind, it's actually going to make life worse for their corridors because they still have to meet the same outcomes. Mean they have to still put the same amount of doors on, right?
Yes. However, there's a big difference between ideas and execution. And that's where bad governance doesn't think that through. Ultimately, you could not put a fourplex on every lot. It just doesn't work.
Well,
There's
you could on almost every lot. I can guarantee you that. I've seen homes in Calgary. They're wild. So just consider this. Just consider this. So I'm looking at your neighbor's house right now. Okay, you could have up down there. You can build another garage up down there. Okay, now this is a little bit bigger lot than mine, right? Now my lot is skinny. I can definitely do up down, and I definitely could put a garage there, and I probably could have two on the garage. And my lot would basically ensure that there's no footprint there.
I see what you're saying, but in order to execute on all of that, the amount of, I'll call it operational gymnastics that you'd have to go through, it would make it wildly cost prohibitive. You couldn't just say, because now your cost per square foot is going to go from 250 to 280 up to 320, 340. And that's one of the principles of building a duplex, triplex, fourplex is you're supposed to get efficiencies and then your price per square foot goes down. That would make it wildly the other direction. Your cost per square foot would go up. It it just, I guess my principle is, and I'm not trying to make light of where you're going with that, because yes, where there's a will, there's a way. Somebody
I
will,
got to show you some of these things because I agree with you. I agree that there's more to it than just the fear aspect of. I,
That's right.
when I the issue that I have is we can see examples of this in Calgary. We can see examples in Edmonton, and everything that's like, oh, they couldn't do that. You look at Edmonton, Calgary, and it's happening. And so, in my mind, I'm saying we have to protect this city to make sure that, regardless of whether it's half the lots, 25% of the lots, or whatever that could do it, we have to protect this city so that the average person isn't going to randomly have a towering building beside them, right? That they didn't expect, because when you build a when you have a house, it's kind of like a contract with the city where it's you aren't going to change everything unless I have a say, right? And the fourplex blanket rezoning was saying, well, we're going to change for everyone without your say, which I'm glad they did away with, right? But I'm just concerned that if they're going to still meet the same outcomes and maintain the corridor thing, they're not doing blanket rezoning, but it's almost like they're saying we're going to make it easier because we have to make these outcomes. So even though it's discretionary,
yeah,
I find like that it's going to be a lot more of a facade because they want to get that money still.
yeah. I can see the, again, I like the
You can see
idea of
where I'm going with it,
poking
right?
holes in. Yeah, right. Like, because what your comments are doing exactly what I want, is poking holes in my theory. Because I oftentimes do take things a little bit to the relaxed side, where I say, okay, great rule, but it's stupid and unenforceable.
Sure.
And oftentimes I'll just live with that. However, you're right. There's a saying, nothing is foolproof to a sufficiently motivated fool, and somebody will push that and will try for that. You're right, totally. So then, how do we protect people? Is there bolt-on caveats that we say, okay, well, because my mind goes to the towering buildings in the neighborhoods, but my other thoughts go to, now we're going to get more speculative rental housing, that people are specifically going towards a tighter population density, which we know leads to a lower quality of life. That's a
Well,
given.
not only does that, it is actually does the inverse of what they're trying to do. They're trying to have affordable housing. If let's say Parkvale, they made it open season, okay, and this is just hypothetical. What would happen immediately, just based on what happened in Calgary and Edmonton, is that every single lot that could be bought would be bought within a week, creating no supply, driving up demand because now speculators, people in Parkvale have been handed letters. I want to buy your house based on this
Eh,
bylaw,
Fair. Yeah,
right? And
absolutely.
so what it does is it drives up all the pricing, right?
Yeah.
Like I know someone in Calgary, they bought a lot, right? And within a year, that lot was worth over $200,000 more sitting on it because of the demand and the natural drive up the price, and all the supply was gone. And so if we really want to make Parkvale more expensive and say that's going to be affordable housing down there, it's not going to work,
No.
right? And what it's also going to do, sorry, what it's also going to do is now your house is worth $200,000 more because you have all this demand around you. What's that going to do for your taxes?
Exactly, because we live on a mill rate,
Yeah.
and it immediately follows.
And if Lancaster and Deer Park and West Park, if they all remain stable, but Parkvale is the one that goes up 200,000, your taxes are going to go insane. So I'm really I don't know if you could tell, protective of the neighborhoods here, because I just see the unintended consequences being so great. And I say unintended tongue in cheek because we actually know the consequences based on
Well,
other cities.
and this is I'm just going to shift because the sun is moving, but what you're describing is absolutely the principles of capitalism and why we need to protect genuine capitalism and let it go unhindered. If we have the case where supply and demand is artificially interrupted, which is always, I think, drawing a blank, the economist out of the States, Milton Friedman was one of them, and then there's another guy who basically they say anytime the government gets involved, it creates an artificial shortage.
Mhm.
And you create that artificial shortage, which then supply and demand still reigns supreme. It doesn't ever change. So I like where you're going with this. That actually got me moving down a thought process that is a little more critical of my sort of laissez-faire kind of approach to it. Because if you create a false shortage, then you are going to drive the prices up and you
Yeah.
are shooting yourself in the foot. And government intervention, it's not the fact that it shoots itself in the foot, it's how fast it can reload. It just goes
Sure.
and
Well,
goes.
and I've always been more laissez-faire too, libertarian-ish, but I've shifted away from that a little bit as far as being a little more hardcore, because the reality is that we do live in a community. We do have neighbors,
Yes.
right? And we do want that contract. Like, this is really what it is. It's a contract saying my neighbors aren't going to be shooting birds 10 feet away from my deck, because that's freedom, right? Like, we actually have a contract with each other that there's certain responsibilities that we have. And I hate that whole wording to a certain degree, because it does sound kind of silly, but it's like we understand and respect each other, right? And when
That's the
you're
key
what
right there.
yeah, and it's not like this government thing where you're forced to. That's why it's important that we get the bylaws right, is so that we don't actually overstep, the rights that go beyond that contract. But when you buy a lot zone for something, you expect that to remain the same,
Yeah.
right? And unless there's town halls and there's agreement that, yeah, we do actually need to adjust this because the technology has changed, things have changed. Maybe in 30 years, if there's driverless cars everywhere, maybe we can have one parking spot instead of two. But that's a thing that we're not going to see until it happens, right? But I like I said, I'm very protective of this contract that people have, and I wouldn't have been there a few years back. Like, I wouldn't have been so, like, we need to protect these heritage communities, because I know if they go after them, right, which have a higher bar, they're going after me next, right? They're going after everyone in the city next. And I don't know who I mean by there. Like, that's kind of a silly thing by saying there. There's a big bad boogeyman. I just mean that if you can put the thought process into a person and call them there, like, that's what's happening. Is that this process it's imperative
Well,
that we squash it in a way.
is it Waskasiu or Friends of Waskasiu, or I should be more up on this as
So
well.
there's three main ones that are kind of doing the charge, where it's Waskasiu, Woodlea, and Parkvale. Those three are really doing the charge of, like, we need to make
Yeah.
sure this doesn't happen. Now, they won in part, right? But there's still a bunch of other things, that provisions. And I don't want to be fearful where it's like you're going to now have an eightplex put up next to you. But the reality is, if we go down this road, what's stopping us from, going further?
Absolutely. A friend of mine was explaining to me their take on it, and they're right down by Thurber down there, and There's supposed to be 100. The proposal was 160 unit or something like that,
something like that.
163 units. And part of me says, great, 163 new units. What a great idea. However, they're going into a region where they know that they'll be able to charge 30% more for those units. There are other regions that that complex can be built if all you're interested in is housing. Now, again, I'm never going to stand in the way of an organization trying to make money. I am never going to do that. However, there are things, as you said, that we need to protect. And some things that we need to protect are what people got into the contract for originally and those types of things. So
Well,
yeah,
and when you are going to interrupt a contract like that, the natural thing that you need to do is if I'm going to have damages, then I'm going to be compensated. And then in that point where it's like, look, we're going to build an eightplex next to you, we're going to write a check for $30,000 to you. My level of protection towards that would naturally drop because I'm like, look, there are damages. But then I look at Calgary and I'm poking holes in my own idea there, where it's like these property values are like guaranteed to drop four or $500,000
totally.
because two buildings put up beside them, and that's a real thing, right?
Yeah,
So I mean, I'm open to having the conversation, and I mean, I appreciate you taking open stance, and I certainly am too, right? If they're going to change it to the point where they're not going to just the word discretion, well, what does that mean? Like, I need to be convinced that discretion actually has points beside it of ticking all the boxes rather than just saying someone in City Hall, is who's trying to meet a quota is going to be the one that's approving these things.
for sure. And I think as we talk about bigger picture issues like that, this is sort of back to the fundamentals of what I want to do as a campaign. And I'm not presenting myself as the answer guy. I'm not coming into this and trying to tell everybody in Red Deer, don't worry, you get me in there, problems go away. I'm presenting myself as I'm going to ask a lot of really good questions. And I'm going to try to find people who will poke holes in the ideas. And I'm going to get what the people genuinely want. And back to your point of we need an increased communication. And that's a cyclical thing. Communication needs a sender, a message, a receiver, a sender, a message, a receiver, and it has to be as clear as possible. Opening the door to that where I'll have to sit in on the town halls more. I'll have to sit in on the information sessions.
Yeah,
It was, yeah, your friend Gabe there that ran that
yeah, it was incredible.
information session, and the turnout was phenomenal.
It was
I,
incredible.
I, I really wished I was able to make it down there so then I could have heard a little bit more about it. I love hearing citizens getting involved. That right there, which also though goes back to your point of people don't should, and should's a big word, people should not have to worry about the city. The city should just happen
Yeah,
and it should just be their thing. So when somebody feels that strongly in the community where you have to have community groups developed, that sort of takes away from is your governance governing the way
yeah,
the people want.
yeah. Well, and I'm presenting myself too. At least I hope I'm presenting myself where I don't know all the answers of why this is happening. All right. And because of that, naturally, I cannot have the solutions until we open those books and figure out what's going on. Right. I can read policy, but until I see how it's being implemented on the other side of the page, then it's hard as a council candidate to be like, I have all the solutions. My natural tendency is to go that way. I have to fight that because the reality is I don't. I don't know if I can give you a 0% tax increase next year because I don't know where the money is going yet. I can go look at the annual report, the budget, all that kind of stuff. It's not going to provide me what I need to know, right? Like I run a personal home budget very tight, very, very tight. I know where every single penny goes, right? And I can go back last year and see exactly what I spent on this month and why and all that kind of stuff. I write notes and all that kind of stuff, right? If I buy a stapler, I know that I bought a stapler. Now,
Right.
I'm not saying we need to have that in the city because that just creates all sorts of, bureaucracy, but I need to know $50,000 expense. isn't a stapler, and it does actually need to be itemized, right? So it's one of those things where I know we can save the city money. I know we can actually have solutions, but until we open those books, I don't know what those solutions are yet. And I don't know if that means I need to pull from here to put here, because I do that all the time in my personal budget where it's like this is actually the higher priority, right? I did that this month where it's like normally we have an amount going to vacation budget, and we had a couple things come up, and it looked like the rest of the vacation budget was going to be good this year, right? And so it's like we actually need to shift this amount and put it over here to make it all work out, because this is the core infrastructure of our home, right?
Yeah. And this is where we really have to make sure that we keep fences around governance versus operations. And I don't mean governance versus operations. I mean just the principle behind governance and the principle behind operations. When you do a deep dive into the numbers, you've got so many things being touched, and it goes back to what I was saying. Are the right people doing the right things at the right time, or are we trying to do everything all the time? Right there, that exercise alone would save a ton of money. I think that bringing people who are, like us, where we live in a world of operations, we execute on things. We have to make sure that, the household, the organization, you run a business, it has to go and feed the family and feed the families that are involved here. We can start to go into that. Maybe the existing council didn't have that skill set. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I wasn't at the table, but I know going forward, that's what people like us are going to bring. Ask the question. I have a friend of mine who works for a county and in northern Alberta, and she said, I wish council would just give me my budget and I'll just adjust the services based on that. Not this present, try again, present, try again, present, try again. I like the idea of one of the things that I've been researching is there's about 21, 22 cities across Canada that are in the 80,000 to 120,000 population. And I looked at average spending, average budget, and it varies wildly.
Yeah.
It goes from 2,500 to 6,800 per person.
Wow.
And Red Deer runs around 4,800 right now.
Yeah.
It comfortably chugged along at 3,500 for quite a while, and then down at 3,200 10 years ago. The big increase was the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And again, I'm going to work on this and try to get people to poke holes in the idea. I like the idea of going to the city and saying you have $3,800 per person.
Uh-huh.
Fit.
Yeah.
And adjust your services based on that. And at the same time, make sure that we have the right people making those operational decisions.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. It gives some ownership, really, right? It's I mean, you're less of an employee at that point, and you become a leader, and then it's almost you have to find the savings, and you have to find the efficiencies,
It
and maybe
humanizes it.
yeah,
You're $3,800 per person.
yeah,
You're not X $100 million to do city work. You're providing services to the people. It humanizes how you think about it. And that immediately makes people kind of counter a wasteful mindset. People immediately think, I am looking after someone, some people. Keeps fostering the ownership that way.
I read a report a couple years ago that the city was looking at taxing us 45% over 5 years, compounded. Now we're a couple years into that, and I cannot find that report again. I wish I saved it, but it was a projection based on that administration provided, and it's just a simple. You go up over it every single year and you compound it, and that's the number that popped out with. So we're basically over 2 years compounded, what, around 17 and a half, 18% tax increase, um, which I find astounding. I wasn't surprised. Like I know the city had a really hard time with it. I know that prices have gone up, and of course, prices for the city went up too. So in a way, I expected a tax increase, right? Now I'm going to fight against every single tax increase, no matter what the reason is, right? But I do not find they were reasonable, and I don't find that they adequately planned in a sense to make these decisions that I don't want to go back and you know your thing of
That's right.
campaigning forward, but I'm thinking, okay, if both of us get elected, I really want to set a precedent of like, okay, today things are going to change. I think what you're saying is we need to really change the culture in the city rather than like we need the employees to take ownership. And
For
I
sure.
know some of the employees. I know that some of them really do,
Yeah,
right? Like honestly, really do,
very strongly. Yes.
very strongly, right? And they're very protective of their department. And then you look at their department, and it's like this is a well-run department, and why? And we need to expand that mindset. I don't know how to do that exactly, but I think these things like you're suggesting, right?
Yeah.
Just shifting the language of how we're communicating is important, and not having this like it's unfortunate that everything has to be politics. Where it's like, oh, we're gonna have a 5% tax increase, and I know we're gonna have 5%, and you know that too, but you need to start at 7, and we need to start at 3, and we need to get there through the politics, right? And but if we shift the culture and have some trust in each other because we've established boundaries and we've established this is what we expect, then we can get there. We really can.
It comes down to the running the business of the city like a business and having people own and understand their impact, their positive impact, and what can be a negative impact of waste. Again, I'm quite content with a tax increase, knowing that there's improved services. It's going to foster growth. It's going to foster economic development, whatever. But when somebody says it's just more expensive, so here's your new budget, I can't do that.
Yeah.
As vice president of operations, the owners of the organization would absolutely, well, I wouldn't be the vice president of operations if I
Yeah.
just let people say, yeah, here's your budget. And it's because things are more expensive. Well, okay, but where, why, what are we doing? How are you controlling? Explain to me where everybody's fitting into this.
Yeah.
That'll be the rigor that I try to bring.
Yeah. Just from a business perspective, I mean, I run a small business. It's not huge. I subcontract with some people in town. But just going back to the efficiency thing, like I cannot believe how many times I've told myself I need to get more efficient and I'm going to change the way I do things and this is how I'm going to do things. Okay, I do that. And then a year down the road, I'm looking at I'm like I need to become more efficient again, right? And then a year down the road, I'm doing the same conversation with myself
Yeah.
of I need to become even more efficient. You know, the first year, I would have never thought I could go beyond where I was, right? But it's this continuous thinking of I need to change the way that I operate according to today's framework, not according to yesterday's, not according to tomorrow's, right? And every single time, I cannot believe I found operational efficiencies, right?
It's they are everywhere and there's no end
Yeah.
to it. And that's actually I think what deters people from
Yeah.
doing it because they say, "Oh, I'll go through this exercise and yeah, I found this. I'll go through this exercise and I found this." And until they realize the true benefit and where the fantastic knock-on effects are of that, it seems like labor. It seems harder. It feels harder than it actually is. When you give people, again, maybe it's a skill set thing. I don't know. And this is exactly my statement. I don't know how the city inner workings, how their operations run. I'll get an opportunity if the people choose to have me represent them. I'll get an opportunity to do a bit of a deep dive, do the learning, and then I can start to make
Yeah.
suggestions on policy. And I also have to be very careful because I am operations. It's been my background.
Yeah.
I'll have to be very cautious not to do too much of that because that's unfair to them.
Yeah. Well, and there is a separation, right, between city council and operations. And I think that needs to be there. I think that that needs to shift a little bit. I think council actually needs a little bit more authority in that regard. I don't know how to get there. They say city councilor has one employee, and that's the city manager, right? Um, I I do think some things need to shift just because we've changed the way we do things, right? Like if we're going to expect the city to improve communications with the people, then I think that the communications between council and operations and all that, the expectations that we have need to improve. I would really like to explore that if I have the opportunity to be elected.
Yeah, that would interest me a lot too, is really working with them. And you can't work with somebody until you understand them
Yeah,
and spend some time understanding because it's super easy to throw darts.
yeah,
It's a lot harder to catch the darts.
yeah,
So this is where, you go in, you meet, you find out what makes the gears turn here, and everybody has great ideas. Again, back to what we were talking about earlier, the idea funnel can be almost infinitely big. It's just that then it has to turn into a centrifuge and
yeah,
actually,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and then it becomes inefficient itself because there's
yeah,
so many ideas being tossed around, right? I think it really like we have a lot of ideas repeating, but it does go back to I actually expect my city to do hard things. I expect the administration to do hard things. To when they're considering a budget, they have so much per person. Like it is actually painful because now you know the people that are going to be affected by this, right? Like maybe
bingo.
there's a service that we provide that is really like low uptick, and it's always going to be a low uptick. It's like we have to do the hard things here, right? And
Yeah,
realize that like we have to take from someone to give the service, right? And we're the people that we're taken from are, of course, the people paying taxes, our citizens. And when you look at it that way, it's like it's really hard to pull that service, or it's really hard to shift that service because a lot of it, I think, is just really going to be shifting. It's not going to necessarily be pulling, but it's really hard to do that. But when I look at it from the standpoint of, and now my residents are going to be richer. And the hard thing is knowing that they will never know that because they don't know the intricacies, right? They don't know the hard decisions that is made at City Hall. And it's a very thankless job. I think council often is a thankless job. But I think some of these administration jobs that they do that quite frankly I rag on a little bit, but I will give them the benefit of the doubt here where they make decisions that I have no idea how hard they are. And I have to
that's where the
applaud them for that, right?
communication thing, that's where the communication thing that you were talking about
Yeah.
earlier comes in. If there's a really good open communication, when people talk about, oh, my cost of living is higher. Okay, well, do you know, does anybody know, and I know some people do, how many streets and neighborhoods one snowplow services up to a maximum of its, if it was to run 24/7, or if it's to run within an affordable range where you're not paying overtime and things like that. So at some point you reach a critical mass and you have to buy another one,
Yeah.
and you have to hire another person, and you have to pay the maintenance, and you have to do this. So where do all these steps, and the city does a very poor job of providing that information to
Yeah.
people. Operationally, they could do that because those metrics exist. I know it.
Yeah.
I've been an operations VP for a long time, and when somebody says, "Hey, you need more money in your capital budget and consequently your operations budget," when somebody asks me why, I had better have a very clear way of
Yeah.
articulating that. The city could do a tremendous job of that.
One thing that is so easy to understand once you get it is the idea that it's more expensive to grow because now our expenses are all front loaded. If we need to buy a new snowplow, okay, there's $1.2 million or whatever for that snowplow, and that's an immediate expense
Yeah,
based on future right growth projections, right?
exactly.
And so all that money, like it is harder for a business to grow. Like just let's just take a service company that provides services or installs something, right? If they're growing and they only have $1 million line of credit, but yet the customers coming in are saying, well, I need $2 million of product, they need to somehow buy that before they're paid for it.
Yeah,
Right. And then it's more difficult for them to meet even if they have all the people in the world to do the installs and all that kind of stuff, it is harder for them to grow. And then all of a sudden, if the economy is slowing down, it's
so
like all of a sudden they run into all this money when the economy slows down because all that money that they had in the line of credit to provide services and all that. Now that all comes rushing back into the business because people are paying them for the previous jobs they did. And right now, as a city, we're experiencing growth. Like we've talked about that. and that's a good thing. I just don't know how it all relates as far as, well, is that why we have a 10% tax increase this year? I mean,
So I'll take the other portion of where you're going with that because it's absolutely accurate. Uh, is then you got staffing.
yeah,
And for instance, let's say you were to take your business and you say, I'm going to hire 3 new people all at once. Well, your free cash flow goes into the toilet, possibly into negatives because you're training the people, you're getting them up to
yes,
speed, you're showing them how you need things done. You realize, oh, well, now I need to build procedures around this. I need to build processes and systems. And now I need a different ERP. Now I need a different accounting system. And so your income can go higher, but your free cash flow
yeah,
goes way down because your expenses go way higher and the productivity per person is way down for a bit. And I think you might be sort of pulling on a good thread here where that would be part of the reason why during a growth phase the machine becomes less efficient. And maybe we have the opportunity to bring some new thinking into it, catch that dip, and make sure that it shows the
uh-huh.
projection of going the right direction. So yeah, I like where you're going with that. That's
It's like I do think we need to build processes, because if we're going to have growth for several years, which I actually think we are going to, some people don't like that, but I think we're there. Like, people want to come to Alberta, and then eventually Calgary and Edmonton. It's like, it's unaffordable. Red Deer is the natural, like, we are the growth hub,
yes,
and I think
totally.
that we need to be respectful of how to do that.
Yeah,
But I feel like we need, processes to ensure we're going to do it smoothly, right? When I have a capital expense at my home, I look at everything, right? Operations, capital, everything. And like, I made a major purchase last year that I did not think that I would be able to do, right? But it took about 2 months. My wife was like, "Oh yeah, you're gonna do it 2 months earlier." Like, she's after we bought it, she's like, "Yeah, I knew that you were gonna do that. You just had to figure out how."
yeah,
And sometimes it just takes the time to figure out and to look from a bird's eye view and say, "I got it. I figured it out." Right?
no, but you've got a really good point, and again, it comes back to more of the communication side of things with the people. Somebody in the city may have that all mapped out. It may be sitting on somebody's whiteboard right now, exactly what the next 3, 5, 7 years is going to look like, and it may be there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
Could we communicate that?
so like this year they didn't mow the lawns for a few months, and then people complained, and but I feel like if people are like, "Hey, we're gonna have to lower the budget for this year, guys, but this is a 1 year thing, and it's because we're doing something so great that we will all actually appreciate that 3 months of dandelions and all that kind of stuff." I think they're kind of pretty, but hey, but we'll all actually understand that, and it does, like you said, come down to the communication and having that futuristic mindset of we're doing something better. We're building something here. And I feel like a lot of the communication isn't there, and it's understood as though we're tearing something down,
Yeah, that's right.
right? Because as a citizen, I just see things being worse. Like really, I see things being worse, and I see multi-million-dollar projects that didn't need to happen. But that's a communication thing, because maybe they needed to happen, and I just couldn't see
Exactly.
the vision.
Exactly. We weren't sitting at the table when they made the decision. We didn't have the information in front of us that they had, or the lack of information that they didn't have, right? Moving forward, it will be about being diligent, asking the questions, not though to the point where you're paralyzed, analysis paralysis type of thing. You've also got to keep running and moving the city, and communication. Communication, I think, is what I'm hearing out of this conversation and what's growing out of this conversation. The main point that I'm taking out of this is we do have to figure out ways to make sure the communication goes 360
Mhm,
degrees
mhm.
completely. People need
Yeah,
to know, and that's where we can really bring value in having contact information and interactions on websites, things like
yeah,
this, where we can share ideas with people, and then people can go into the comments and we can take a peek and say,
yeah,
"Wow, I wish we'd have thought of that while we
yeah.
were talking."
I will acknowledge that the city has tried. Like
Oh
they
God.
have tried, like they have increased the even just the texting for snow and like the emails. Like you can get three different types of communication that they're gonna clear your road, right? Like they've tried. I just feel like they're 5 years behind all the time.
Bingo.
And I feel like you and me could probably bring something to the table to bring them up to speed, right? And I think we're both naturally curious, and because of that, we're dabbling in things that people won't necessarily dabble in for the next year. And then by the time it gets to government, it's going to be years behind, right? Where we need
Mhm.
people that are forward looking.
I
And
I I heard a hideous story that there was a department in the United States that just retired the last floppy disk.
really,
Like,
I heard there's still faxes every now and then.
oh
Faxes,
my God, the
faxes,
floppy
yeah,
disk. It was, and it absolutely blew me away because it was an integral service. It, they still had floppies, and they finally took all the floppies and put them into the cloud, or their
so
service. I assuming they're not on the cloud.
I asked someone recently where it's like, why do you still use MS DOS? It blew me away.
Yeah.
And they said the reason we use MS DOS is because the security costs of every other platform are astronomically higher. Whereas MS DOS is actually the most secure thing we could do for our cost per unit or whatever they're doing. And that is the only reason they're using MS DOS, because their organization is so large that that their security costs would jump in, like by a large metric, where it would start affecting pricing and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, that kind of makes sense actually.
It does, but then operational Adam pops in and goes, sure, but your day-to-day operating costs would go way down. Your training costs would go way down. Bringing somebody up to
Yes.
speed on an MS-DOS system is painful. First
Yes.
and
Oh my
foremost,
goodness.
break into the museum, steal the manual,
Yeah.
dust it off, teach people how to use, right? Like it's so perhaps they did find one metric that they're
Yes.
saving a bunch. But
That's a
did
great
they,
point.
and they may have asked these questions, but did they ask the questions of operability, user interface, and all the other, how many people does it take to maintain an MS-DOS versus a Windows or a Mac, that type of thing? So,
Yeah, I didn't even think of that other side of it. See, I think we would naturally do very well together in council. I think that the way that we think really jives, and like you really need to do away with the ego, right? And when you come from it, or from the perspective of, I actually want you, like I know I'm passionate about the fourplex issue, right? I want you to actually say you're wrong here, right? Like you're seeing this in a way that isn't going to happen, and so the way that you're carrying yourself is wrong. I don't think I am on that one, but I want that ability to go back and forth, right? And then having conversations like this when we are elected. One thing that you mentioned, going to town halls and all that, it's frustrating to me that administration, and I'm just repeating things here, and not from anyone particular, but it seems like they don't want councils to go to these town halls. And they want to present to council what they found, but they don't want council attending. And I know
is it possible?
there's more than once that like I've had ex or not ex counselors, previous counselors reach out and just be very concerned about, the way that administration approaches certain things in that regard. Again, it's just a culture shift. I don't think there's any ill will in that. They just see it from a very technical and, different type of viewpoint. But it's like, I think we need to elect counselors that are able to think for themselves, and are to acknowledge at times when, there might be bias involved. But I think they're scared that if you go to a town hall, you're immediately going to be biased. Where in my mind, it's like, you go to a town hall and you get a perspective, right? And then you go
That's
to the
right.
next town hall and get a new perspective.
And I do think that there are several people on the existing council who are doing a good job of that. They are curious. They are trying to find out all the
Yes.
information and parse it out before they make a decision. Because if you look at any major decision, there's that old adage, the iceberg of information. And when you're at the top of the iceberg, the bit that's below the above the water is exponentially smaller than the amount that's under the water. And if you don't go diving every now and then, you're never going to do it. And again, I do think that some of the sitting council right now are doing a great job.
Mhm.
I'm not going to go into specific names. I don't think that, I don't think it's fair necessarily to make endorsements at this stage and things like that. But I do know that of the ones that I've talked to, I've seen a couple people who are very surface level, but I've seen quite a few of them that are really trying to get in depth.
And sometimes it's and no names again, of course, but it's just like sometimes it's people that surprise you,
Yes.
right? That is like so the town hall there was a bunch of counselors that showed up, and I think they were I this is just me guessing. It's like, well, the issues dealt with, the town hall was actually hosted after the vote, so I think there was more openness for them to attend that, right? But I went up to everyone and I thanked them for coming, like genuinely thanked them, right?
Yeah.
And some of them had legitimate reasons for not going, and I understand why you can't attend everything too, right? And one thing I mentioned when I was doing a podcast with Gareth was just like the idea of, do we need to have counselors be full time? I go back and forth with that because I'm like, well, with technology and what we've talked about, we should be able to minimize. But I think really what makes you a good counselor is the communication aspect, is doing things like this, where it's like it takes up actually a lot of time. Like people don't see I'm going to have to spend 3 or 4 hours after this is done putting this together, right? And so I go back and forth on the idea of, does council need to be full time? And I'm landing on the idea of, yes, council needs to be full time as long as we can find the efficiencies to pay for it, right? Because it's actually not a huge increase to shift it to full time, but it would be a major difference in the quality of our counselors, right? And there's a lot of expectations on counselors that they attend every single thing, but it's like, look, the council is part time. They have families. They are allowed to be a person. You actually want them to have experiences, to have a whole world,
Absolutely.
right? It's I read a quote by C.S. Lewis just teaching people how to write, and it was basically, if all you ever think about is writing, you will be a bad writer.
Completely.
If you don't have
Absolutely
any
true.
experiences outside of your counsel because you need to go, work a second job, or if you're not allowing your counselors to experience things outside of that council room, then they're going to turn into bad counselors because it's just the echo chamber then.
That's exactly the term I was going to use. I myself am categorically against it. I don't think that they need to be full time. I think it would be doing a disservice to make them full
Yep.
time, because then there's a principle where a vapor fills a chamber. And if it looks like you need to be filling that time, you're going to fill that time. Now, are you filling that time
Yeah.
productively? When you're on a time budget, you have to be more innovative. There are tools, there are plenty of tools. And again, Red Deer will reach a critical mass where you will need to make that happen. I don't think 100, 150,000 people is there yet. I think that part of the reason you want to bring in good, strong time management, good operational skill sets is because that's what they're going to bring. They're going to elevate the level of governance because they are juggling flaming chainsaws all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And you learn very quickly the ones that are good at that and are going to bring a benefit, and the ones that need to fill that chamber as a vapor.
No, I like that. That was a good response. Because I go back and forth where I understand, like, but what you said though really hit me, just as far as like, you're going to fill that time, and there's no guarantee that it's going to be actually to benefit
Value
the
added.
community.
That's right.
I'm approaching it from the perspective of, I want them to be able to go to town halls. I want them to be able to do more in the community. I don't want to force, like, any employer, if they said, well, you work 30 hours a week, 25 to 30 hours a week, but yet you have to do all these evening things too, right? And I'm just trying to figure out how to meet this expectation from the community, because there is an expectation. When I hear the community talk, it's like, well, there is that. Well, why didn't they go to that town hall that, three other counselors went to, right? And then all of a sudden it's like, let's look negatively on those people because it's like, well, maybe he needed to go to his kid's recital. Maybe they need to do stuff and actually participate in life, right? No business would treat their employee. Well, I hope no business would treat their employee that way. So I'm just trying to figure out how to meet this expectation and doing it in a way that's really live for people to see. And I hope people can see my thought process here because like maybe it is involving some tools that we don't know about yet. That there's a way to give a synopsis to these town halls that haven't been done before, so that people can participate in a town hall in 15 minutes rather than having to go. Like just going to an event,
Absolutely.
just going to an event is an extra hour. So if a town hall is 2 hours, going and like coming and going is 3 hours, and then the intellect that's involved in processing that all, like it's a half day job going to a 2 hour town hall, right? But yet
Totally.
if I'm elected, I want to meet that expectation.
Yeah.
And so my thought process is how can I meet that expectation, right? So I'm coming at it from an honest angle. It's just I appreciate your response though, because that hits hard. Where
People
yeah,
perform under pressure, or I guess people
I certainly do.
perf- people perform to their level under pressure.
Yeah,
And that's what we need to elect
yeah,
is people who have a high performance mark. One of the things, and I'm the vice president of operations at Prime Boilers. Again, a very community minded
yes,
organization. And I've got people who I mentor, I work with, coach and develop. And the first statement with the owners and the president was, "You'd be fantastic in that role. You have a high capacity, you organized, you move things along, and you use the tools." This is another great example of where, as a council, we could move forward with proposals on, here are the tools you need to use, here's the training to use those tools. It's not really a good idea to have 8 people plus a mayor wandering around grabbing their own tools and then
yeah,
going to work on the same car. You really want to make sure that everybody knows that, okay, we're at this phase, you need these tools, we're at this phase, we
yeah,
need those tools. That can be a governance of governance, making sure that those sort of things are put in place and then the checks and balances
yeah.
exist. There's all kinds of really fantastic ways of looking at it as an opportunity to grow, develop, bring up the skill sets of some of the existing. Because you do need, as much as oftentimes people will say, oh, we just got to change them out, you do need a certain amount of continuity because you need the story behind why did you come up with that
100%,
decision. Yeah.
100%.
But what we can bring is the tool sets and exploring and identifying and training on how to make us more efficient.
Yeah, yeah. No, really good points. Really good points. I appreciate that. So like my heart is just to have people's expectations met. Like it goes back to people don't want to hear about the city, right? And people just want things to work, right? And if they feel the need to communicate, like overly communicate, especially with this town hall thing where people got riled up and rightly so in my mind, maybe it's just a matter of okay, well we have something here and we need to really step it up in this moment, right?
Yeah.
But like I think council's paid fairly at this point. I think there was I think there was many years where it was questionable, and then there was the inflation that happened, and I think we're actually landed on a really good model. I just want to make sure there's a good balance there, and maybe we're there. Maybe we're there. Maybe I'm asking questions that for myself I just need to work through that
Totally.
don't necessarily need to be asked right now. But I mean that's the point of having conversation, right?
Bingo. You've got to get different perspectives and weave that into the tapestry of your decision making.
Yeah, yeah,
I think again, we we do pay our governance fairly here. And as far as I understand, I've never in talking to the counselors, I don't think I've ever heard any of them say, "No, it's ridiculous. We need to be compensated way higher
yeah,
or way lower." I think that it does reach that middle point,
yeah.
and ultimately, that's up to the people to decide.
Sure.
Realistically, if it became a big issue, we
Yeah.
would know.
I think people because they've experienced inflation, because the last 5 years they just see everything going up and up and up. I think people, they recognize that, okay, these are real people, they actually need to live,
Yeah.
and we need to pay people to a certain point where they don't need another full-time job. They might need a day or week. Like if I'm elected, I probably need a day or week to do something else because I got 5 kids at home, right? Like it's expensive. But the nice thing about my job is that I can learn a lot while working, right? So a lot of what I learn is through listening while I'm working because my job's like there's times I have to shut it off and really focus, and there's times that I can, be really productive while learning. So I can multitask there. I just want to make sure that things are fair, right?
And I love that approach. It really comes down to, am I providing what the people of Red Deer hopefully will be electing me to do? I want to represent them. And if I represent them and I appear that I'm just filling space, that sends a very, very poor message. Now, if I try to represent them and I appear frazzled, rushed, unprepared, equally bad. So that's where it comes down to. I actually did a lot of research on this. And again, the 21, 22 communities around the same size, how much time do they spend with various committees, with various ceremonies and whatnot? And it does say anywhere between 10 and 30 hours a week. But those aren't 10 and 30 hours a week, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5.
No, there's weeks you're going to pass
There's
budget week, you're going to be 60 hours.
uh, totally. And that's where, in my case, I've had a really good discussion with my fellow executives at the organization, at the company, and again, my boss and the owners. And it's comes down to a function of, okay, manage your time and manage your expectations. That's what I'll do. That's what I'm here for. I didn't get
Well,
to this.
it's no different than dealing with the budget issues, right? It's really planning ahead, seeing something coming at you from a mile away, rather than next week I have to deal with this issue, right?
Exactly.
And so I mean, what I'm hearing is if you can deal with budgeting, if you're good at budgeting, you're going to naturally be good with your time management, right? As long as you just have to think of it that way, right?
Absolutely. You're budgeting time versus budgeting money. And having, again, the tools that exist. Like when I pull up my phone, I have 4 different calendars all amalgamated into one. Again, I use AI, say,
Yeah,
go through the last 5 days of emails, give me items that have been escalated to me, and give me items from critical people, and give
yeah.
me items that I may have missed. Boom. It compiles it, and there I start that. Now I plan out, and I go, okay, cool. And now I've got this, I've got that. I move this, I delegate that, I train this person to make sure that they understand what they need to do. Now it's off my plate, even better. And I got their skill sets up. So again, I love the idea of forcing people
I
to develop and grow under
think
pressure.
that's huge. I could, I probably could have that calendar. It's just the idea of doing that is intimidating. And all I need to do with most things is watch it be done once, and I can do it,
Someday you and
right?
I can sit
And
down and I'll walk you through where everything touches. I've got right now, 4 email addresses on the go,
yeah,
and all critical. Critical's probably overstating my value. Maybe I should
important.
dial that back a touch. But you and I could sit down sometime, and I'll just walk through where all the touch points are, and then the key is getting it all in one presentation. That ultimately, and that eliminates that scattered
Yeah.
feeling. And
Well, I think that idea just with all of council is so important because my tendency and why I'm like, okay, full time and not full time. I mean, it goes down to communication, making sure I'm meeting expectations from the community.
totally critical.
But then I also know myself where my tendency is to spend too much time on something, right? That you look back and it's been 3 hours and you meant to spend 15 minutes on that, and then getting lost in not getting lost. I know what I'm doing, but time gets away from you. And I over care about stuff sometimes, right? And I put things on a value perspective that I know intellectually that it's probably a medium, not a critical, but I will approach it as though it's a critical, because I tell
Sure.
myself, well, if you're going to be a good counselor, everything's critical, right? But shifting, having the ability to use tools to organize it, and then you can have your time. This is my critical time, and this is my medium time, and you do need to deal with the low hanging fruit. Like one of the biggest complaints that I've heard over the past several years is someone puts an innocent email out to a counselor or to all the counselors, and they hear nothing back. And it's like I think that people deserve to be emailed
That's
back.
deplorable.
Yeah,
And I will categorically put that in the deplorable section because these are the people that you're
yeah.
representing.
Well, and I've been told that council doesn't actually receive that many emails. That they come in droves, where it's like there's an issue, and all of a sudden you get your 100. And like, but from individual people, it's very manageable. But then, like, I understand sometimes you don't know how to respond, and sometimes I've done this myself, where I don't know how to respond to this. I need to think about it, and then a week later, I'm like, oh, I never emailed it back. And I'm sure just the human nature, is part of that.
Again, back to using the tools to organize things. We are working really hard at Prime to implement. You have one business day to reply to somebody who reaches out to you.
Mm,
That's the extent of it. Now, it's difficult and it slips, no worries. But you learn very quickly the tools that you need. Because oftentimes I've coached people and other executives have really good ideas around this. Sometimes you reply with, man, I really don't know. I'm going to find that out. I'll get back to you in 5 days.
yeah,
And then you put it in your calendar. 3 days, find it. 5 days, report on it. That's using the tools and that's making sure because you're right. Something goes down. We live in a world where we get hundreds of emails
hmm
and 9% of them are really worth looking at. Once it gets buried, out of sight, out of mind. So you use the tools. You say,
yeah,
okay, good. I get back to this person. And sometimes you have to deliver bad news. That's also one of the things that people won't do. They won't
uh-huh.
just say, unfortunately, this is the answer. I live in a world where you have to deliver the good news in the same tone you deliver the bad news because you're just delivering news. That's all there is to it. You have to get over that fear of how's this person going to respond because the person's going to respond way worse if you're giving them bad news a
Yeah.
week later and they feel like you didn't even put
You just
prior.
ignored them. Yeah, you ignored them, and now it's not just you're giving me bad news. It's you hate me, right? And but really, there's an element of there where it's like, yeah, understandable, right? And
It's a person on the other side of that email.
yeah,
It's not just text on a screen.
yeah,
It's a person who genuinely had a concern. We may not understand what drives their concern because that's also another factor is people say, I really want X. And you think, why? That doesn't make any sense. I don't care. That's not how you approach it when you're a representative. You have to go into maybe I need to figure out why this person, maybe I have to ask some more questions, or maybe I just have to tell them, great idea, but it's not going to happen. And here's
yeah.
why.
Well, and some things too, they're not even looking for a solution, or the solution isn't right at that time. Where it's just like I understand that you bring something up. This is the first I heard of it, but now that you brought it up, I'm going to pay attention, right? And then all of a sudden, it's like seeing a name. We named our youngest daughter Lux. Okay, Lux, it means light. And as soon as we decided to name her Lux, or that was on the short list, we saw it everywhere, absolutely everywhere. And I say all that just like as soon as someone brings something up, and you have the attitude of this is a person, I need to respect them, but now I don't know what to say to them because this isn't on our radar at all. But as soon as it's on your radar, it could be, oh, I have too many slugs in my neighborhood. But then all of a sudden, every single time you see a slug, you're like, they're right. They're right. I didn't know this was an issue. Right? Silly example there, but at the same time, it's like we as I think it's just we as humans um, need to have our minds open to things sometimes, and sometimes forcefully so, and we need to be willing to have them open.
Totally. And it
And
gets back to your point way back, ego. You got to put your
yeah,
ego in check.
yeah,
Just because you don't understand the importance of it doesn't mean it's not important.
yeah, yeah. Well, is there anything? It's been 2 hours and
Yeah,
20
this has been
minutes.
great.
This has been great. So I really appreciate you talking to me, and I really hope you're elected, Adam. Like I think you'll be a great
Same,
representative.
same here. I think you would be a terrific representative. You've been
This,
involved in policy and you've been involved as an active citizen for a long, long time, and you've listened to a lot of people. And that right there
oh, thank you.
is a very important perspective.
Thank you. This makes me excited for, the potential of sitting around council and discussing and being stretched and growing and really doing it for the purpose of making the city better. I have a little bit of a slogan that inadvertently come up with, and I didn't mean to. It's just every time I spoke, it's just these words came out of my mouth where it's just like we're going to change the city for the better, right? And it's I think back to some of the slogans before, or just the change, right? And it's like, well, change what, right? And I like, how do I flesh out? Okay, what does better mean, right? And I think having these conversations is really really important because it's hard to say what change means. It really is. Everyone's idea is needs to be valued, and everyone's ideas of what change looks like to make it better. There's a lot there, right? But I think we're going to change the city for the better, and then having these conversations of what that looks like is super important. And I really value that you're willing to sit down with me. In a way, we're competitive, right? But I say, you know what? If I get ninth place and we have 8 good counselors above me, I am happy.
I
Like,
agree with
I
that.
would be sad. I would be sad.
Of course.
But I'm happy because it's not about me. It's not about, I mean, it's not about Adam in a sense. It's really about making the city a better place, right?
As long as the city gets what's best for the city.
Absolutely.
I love it. Appreciate it. Thanks for
Yeah.
coming over.
Yeah. This was great. This deck was nice. Had some thunderstorms at the end,
Yeah.
birds chirping and whatnot. But
This is I love an outdoor space.
yeah,
And this I designed and built this actually middle of all the COVID nonsense. I had a little time on my hands, and luckily I got purchased everything before the ridiculous run up on
yeah,
prices and put this up. And I use this thing even in the winter.
yeah.
Yeah, periodically. Don't get me wrong. I don't sit out here when it's wicked cold. But yeah, I'll play some darts. I'll sit out here, have family. We got a fire table, or I'll be out back. I do. I use the term quite a bit. My dad used to say, "We're Hill Williams. We're not hillbillies. We're Hill Williams. We're just a little bit more sophisticated." And I do because I just love the idea of sitting around, talking with people, having fun. Again, play some darts, sit by the fire, have a beer. Makes life easier. I find just keeping it simple and just enjoying it.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Absolutely. All right, guys, that's it. So thanks to Adam for joining us today, and please on October 20th vote for Adam. Right, vote for Calvin
And Calvin.
as well. I appreciate that. This is really about getting you to know candidates better, knowing how we think, knowing how we interact. That's something that I think is going to be necessary going forward, and we're trying to make it easier for you to do that. So thanks for listening to the Calvin Goulet-Jones podcast. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.